Mike Garde with us. Before I give a little intro to Mike, I just want to make some quick announcements. We've been working all semester so far to try and get our vast library up and running. And I can say that starting this week, the library itself is going to be running. We have books on religion, philosophy, the ancient Near East, all manner of stuff. You can access that on our website, which is like Tcdtheo.com. Or we're going to be having open days this Tuesday and Thursday, 2 to 4 in the Bram-Stoker room upstairs. So if you guys just want to come along, bring a membership card, and you can sign out any books. There's some really good ones that are quite rare in the library and everything. So it'd be great to see some of you guys there. My second announcement is just about our trip to Dundee Park on the 10th of April. So far, we've confirmed that we're going to be doing a gong healing meditation session with representatives from the Sikh Council of Ireland. We're also going to be going on a shamanic journey with Martin Duffy, who's a shamanic therapist. It's going to be great. And we're also soon to confirm one other style of meditation. We haven't done it yet. But the trip is an overnight trip, and it's €50 including your bus, like all your meals, reception in the evening, all the classes. So if you want to go on that trip, just give myself or any of the committee just a shout after the talk. But moving on to tonight, as I said, we're very happy to have Mike Garde. Mike is the Director of Dialogue Ireland, an independent trust designed to promote understanding of new religious movements and cultism at the service of Irish society. Mike himself did his thesis on the Magnificent Meal movement. I actually had the pleasure of reading it. It was very helpful to my own work. Mike's a really great guy, and I hope you'll all join me in welcoming Theo.
I was trying to work out when I first spoke at this august society, of the Theological Society. I think it was at around 1967 when I was still in my short trousers. When people used to wear short trousers, and then I think at some time when you were a member of the society, you got free tickets with Ryanair when you joined the society. So I'm not sure whether you're still doing that or whether you're waiting now when they make it into a bus. But basically, first question is, what is the difference between a theological society? As a theologian, my own field of study has taken me from Presbyterian, Baptist, Mennonite, Catholic. I'm the first person who studied at Maynooth, and I used to spend my weekends in Trinity, and then I did my Masters at Milltown. So I've never actually studied here, but I knew quite a few of the people who were part, like Sean Frame was a priest in Maynooth when I met him in Tubingen when he was doing some of his studies in the New Testament. He then became the head of the theology department here in Trinity, and I think he was part of this Near Eastern study stuff that you're now doing. And as far as the difference between religious studies, which is the study of the phenomenon of religion, and the theological discipline, when I started off in the Catholic Church especially, we used to read the book by Cardinal Newman, The Idea of a University, which the idea was that theology was the queen of all the sciences. And of course, I think that particular concept is having a great deal of problem, as you can see by the fact that if you look at your own website, you I think have kind of retreated quite a lot from that theological perspective. What I want to say is that as a theologian, the lesson that I've had to learn in dealing with the cult problem is that cultism has very little to do with theology. Sometimes seems difficult because most people want to frame this as a question of freedom of religion against the encroachment of a secular state, or people who are trying to deny people the right to believe. And I think we'll come back to that later. And in Ireland, there's a great deal of confusion around the concept of religion due to our particular historical and sectarian evolution. Also because of our particular confused educational system. So when some of you would have gone to your census, remember last year when you filled it in on some night in April, in someone else's bedroom possibly, but you had to be in the house, whoever was in charge. The question on religion was this: what religion are you? Now, you don't have to be too discerning to know that if anybody asks a question like that in the current climate, religion is a no-no word. I'm not into religion, I'm into spirituality. Whatever that is. That's the kind of concept that we all use. In fact, the notion of religion is a very dark one, and so most people, as we saw in the statistics, are no religion. But what is no religion, please? What's no religion? 4-time growth in that sector since the last time, in the 2006 one. Do you know how many pantheists there were in the country? There was more than 4 times the amount of atheists. But of course, atheists defined in the terms of the question, no religion. But of course, an atheist doesn't define themselves in terms of religion, so therefore to ask them their own question would be much better. What is your belief? And then they can answer it, rather than having this weird concept that we have statistics which are no use to us because we can't use them. And so, for instance, the first question is, what religion are you? And of course, most Irish people, now there's a 10% group of people who are Catholics in this country. Some of them are. Then there's a larger 86% who are what I would call the cash and carry Christians. That's the ones who, take the cash at confirmation and run. They do the exit at that stage. And then you have those who are a la carte Protestants, but still use the label Catholic because that's what they were born in. In fact, when I came to Cork from South Africa in 1960, at the age of 12, I came to a city which was 99.9% Catholic, and I had come from a society where we had special cards to alert us to what our racial group was. So there were benches for whites, there were benches for coloureds, and there were benches for blacks. There were beaches where the sharks were most infested were where the blacks swam. The ones that had most of the nets were where the whites were. And so if you're white, it's all right. If you're black, if you're brown, stick around. But baby, if you're black, get back. That was the culture of South Africa. And then I come to Cork. And if you're Catholic, it's all right. If you're Protestant, stick around. But if you're dissenter, get back altogether. If you went to a Protestant service in the 1960s, you were excommunicated and you were going to hell. Ding, ding! And then I went to a Protestant dance. I walked in, because I was brought up by my mother, who was Catholic, but she decided to be Protestant when she came to Ireland for some reason. And when I went to this dance, they asked me for the blue card. Blue card? What's this blue card for? Oh, that's for Protestants only. Can come to the dances. Why is that? Because if you married a Catholic, you must sign over the kids. End of story. But then by the time we came to the 70s, then it became very kosher to be going out with a prod or a Quaker. That's even the best thing. Like Myrtle Allen down in Cork, the lovely restaurant, and her son then with the problems with the pornography problem, as you know. But later, the definition was still confused. So people in Ireland think that someone is a member of a religion. So recently they gave the initial results of the census, and the largest religion after Catholicism, guess what it was? The Irish concept of religion, the Church of Ireland. The Church of Ireland is not a religion. It's part of the Christian faith, which is part of a subgroup of Christianity. Catholicism is the largest group, but according to Dominus Jesus, the Catholic teaching is that the majority of people, the Catholic Church is the church founded by Christ, and all other churches are not proper churches in the proper sense of the word. That's Cardinal Connell was part of the crowd who wrote that up 2000. We're still living in a kind of weird botanic garden. And so then Methodists are another religion, Presbyterians are, and then there are Islam was the next question, and then no religion. So the definition means that we're totally confused as to who we are. The president uses this term, Bertie Ahern, Gay Byrne, they all use these terms, religion. Miriam O'Callaghan on the news, they don't get it. Every single commentator misuses the word religion, and so therefore I would say, you have a great job to do here, and keeping us on the run. And so, what I'm trying to say is, in understanding these issues and clarifying what we're talking about, that brings us then to the big C. I'm not talking about cancer, I'm talking about cults. And the issue is, we're not talking about cults as in the sense of a whole list of groups. Now, for instance, the Belgians and the French have classified, and then they got the YMCA as being part of a cult, because it didn't. Someone had written a letter about the YMCA and the Amish down there somewhere in the middle of Flanders were regarded as being a danger. And so, no, it's not about naming names, it's about understanding the phenomenon. So let me take you to the widest definition of a cult. Think of a country that you consider to be the most cult-like. It would have been clear a few years ago. Think of Stalinist Russia. Think of somewhere like China with its complete control. Now we've got a very mixed bag. We've got a kind of a free market interspersed with the ruling dominance of the Communist Party. But then if you go to North Korea, that to me is a good example of a cult-like state. If you can just focus on that, with beautiful 6-line motorways, with a former head of state who used to go around in a train with about 6 different chefs, eating the most beautiful food, while his people were eating grass around him. Now, think of South Korea, all its difficulties. It's a democracy with all the implications of a democracy, the Fianna Fáils and the Fine Gaels and the Sinn Féins. Those are the relativities of a democracy. North Korea, there's no relativism. It's pure, absolute control, mind control, mental manipulation. The people are, when the leader dies, you remember? So that everybody started screaming and crying. Was this really genuine? What were we dealing with? And so that's the context. Then we come to our own Irish versions. Think of the groupthink of RTE. Think of the groupthink of Fianna Fáil and the Bertie years, where people were just being paid off, more money down the drain, more institutions being set up, no anything being implemented, nothing being done, no. Just keep creating law, but don't implement it, don't actually create structures to implement anything. And then we had our banking boys, they even have to make a play now with these dolls and to get the message over, but don't put a picture on anybody in case we kind of break the law of these fellas. But if you can find somebody who's just breaking some minor law, stick them away for 3 months, but don't do anything to a banker or to a politician. Let them continue to rape and reap a harvest of control and manipulation. Let that not affect us. And then last week I had the most beautiful email from a young lady that I had never met, from Cork. In 2001, I believe, her parents came to me on telephone. We have a daughter, she's changed radically. She's totally different. She used to be very loving and she has a relationship with this fellow. She was recruited and overwhelmed emotionally, and to such an extent that she agreed with this man that she met on the internet, who came over to Cork, took her over psychically, took her to America, and she surrendered, and she actually left her own goods and possessions on the side of the road which her family found, and she disappeared. But fortunately, through a battle and a great personality and power in her life, she managed to get her act together, and she's come back to Ireland, and she did marry somebody, and she's having problems with that. But she wants to be at the service of people, and what's triggered it was the bullying. But she wanted to say thank you to Dialogue Ireland for the help that we extended to her. I did flip all. All I did was listen to someone, a mother, but it was sufficient for them to understand that they were not nuts, that this influence that was being exercised over this one individual. So think of the one individual to North Korea. That's where we have these tendencies and attitudes. It can happen in a Trinity classroom. It can happen in a school. It can happen in a political party. It can happen in a company. A lot of these so-called big companies are like cults because they have to maintain control. It's no different to a cult. In fact, many of the cults infiltrate, like Dell, Scientology, were producing the training courses in Dell in Ireland at one stage. And so we now move on to look at the issue of what is it that we look at here? How do we look at it? And I think the way to look at it is through the framework which we have chosen. Dialogue Ireland originally was a Christian organisation of an ecumenical nature to respond to the issue of cults and sects. It was generally a Catholic in its flavour, and we had a number of trustees who were from the main churches. But the interesting thing is, when we actually got attacked, the people that attacked us, guess who they attacked? They didn't attack me. They attacked our patrons. Because if you can neutralise the patron, you neutralise the work. And so we began to realise that what we had to do was to actually not, in fact, operate under the churches, but with the churches, but then we actually had to distance ourselves from the churches because the churches themselves became part of the problem. As we saw from 1994 onwards, the Catholic Church is in denial, and it was functioning as a state within the state. It was functioning under a different rule of law than that which most of us were participating in. Namely, it was using canon law, which was not a law subject so that, for instance, when a child was abused, canon law seemed to not function to bring that person to report it to the Garde, bring it to their proper investigation. It's not my job to investigate things, but it was the job that the state and the church were colluding in this area, and so we could not get assistance from the Catholic Church because they were part of this problem. And we had exactly the same in 2004. I won't mention any names, but a man who was leading a very, very powerful church community here in the Church of Ireland, in the inner city, became involved in sexual assault of a vulnerable adult. And at that time, the focus was on the people being child abuse. But then, somehow, child abuse went out the window when it was a person who was an adult, over 18, or at the margins of adulthood. They couldn't be vulnerable according to this line, so they were only interested in the media if it was child abuse for some reason. So we swung from one extreme to the other, and then, for instance, take the group called the House of Prayer, which is the House of Prayer, which is a woman called Christina Gallagher, who has ripped off hundreds of old people. She has millions of money made from ill-gotten gains of vulnerable adults who are of the older generation, who have no means to even challenge this because they are told not to go near the internet. It's dangerous. That My Garde and that fellow Jim Gallagher, that's disgusting newspaper, the Sunday World. Ugh. But Jim just kept following the money trail. Everybody else was talking about whether she was a genuine visionary, whether Mary was coming in. And of course, we have the Protestant versions with these groups that are using the gospel to promote wealth and massive rip-offs of people's heads and minds. And in the Protestant version, they use Jesus, and in the Catholic version, they use Mary as the scam artist approach. So in other words, once you can get someone dislodged in their head to use the religious construct to break into their head, that's how they do it. And so we then move to a human rights base. So we see our work not as kind of deciding which group is a cult and which isn't a cult, which is a genuine religion. That is not our function. Our function is to deal with the victims of abuse, of mind control, of people who have lost their freedom to engage. Just to give you one concrete example, someone who went on a Tony Quinn course. Guess what the Tony Quinn course costs? €64,000. She sold half of her house and used it for that course. She did another course costing $18,000. She's now living in a county north of here with her cat and her dog, and she has absolutely got no money whatsoever. She's been literally wiped clean by Tony Quinn. Tony Quinn, I'll come back to him in a minute, did a lot of stuff, but we see our role as being in the human rights framework, and that's why, interesting enough, we have a very interesting question that arises. I don't know if any of you heard about the woman in 2006 who claimed she was Catholic when she went into the Coombe Hospital. Now, this isn't a case of a vulnerable child, this is a case of a woman who gives birth and she has an 80% bleed, hemorrhage, and she has to either be saved immediately, so there's the judge, the doctor in this case, who happens to know, he goes in and he gives her a blood transfusion. Oh, some of the other colleagues saying, not sure that's a good idea. And I remember hearing Sam Smith, I was in some restaurant on Sunday, that same Sunday, oh, that man, he's really bad. Do you know, he tried to save that woman's life. Her right to choose was denied. What planet are we on in this country? So, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that someone is not allowed to have a blood transfusion, and we are supposed to allow this dysfunctional construct to dictate our medical policy? Sorry, but anyway, then the woman woke up in the morning. She was initially so grateful for being saved, and her child was saved, and about 12 o'clock, someone with a suit like this came in from the organisation, and suddenly she was connected to a court case which Justice Lefroy heard in 2008. She took the side of the hospital. It cost the hospital $1 million, and it cost Jehovah's Witnesses $1 million, which they sought to get back from the state. The Attorney General nearly had a heart attack with it. I'm not going to be paying for that weird construct. And I noticed that they've sold their massive headquarters in Newcastle County, Wicklow, possibly to pay for that massive thing. We had the same problem with Scientology. They had a massive hit in 2002, 2003 with Mary Johnson, which I think has left them in a very, well, they never were financially sound, but this finished them off as far as I'm concerned. And so the reality is, though, that yesterday or Saturday, some of you, I'm not sure, you were all supposed to be, as young people, helped by having it on a Saturday, remember? So you're going to vote. I don't know how many of you did, but some of you may have voted for the proportionate means provided by law. Did you notice that part of the new amendment to the Constitution? A proportionate means as provided by law. Currently, if a young child is hemorrhaging and needs to have a blood transfusion, the Irish state, according to the existing law as it was, the High Court could intervene. Now they can only intervene subject to appropriate legal restraints. But there is no law. The Irish state has constructed no bit of law in any area. For instance, that Church of Ireland minister got the Probation Act 1907. Is it to be found anywhere? That's when we were part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. It's still operating here, as is the 1856 Act, which I was deposed to go to some place in Denver by Tony Quinn. Still functioning here. We don't seem to do law. We sometimes borrow some things from the Brits, but we don't seem to be too great at renewing ourselves. So all these acts that are supposed to be coming into place, we've got a budget coming up, when are they going to happen? But let's say there's a child tonight. Which law will they be subject to? There ain't any. Because Justice Lefroy suggested that there should be changes to the law, but they ain't there, because we don't do that, because that's religion. Keep away from that stuff. We don't even talk about it. And so, the Irish state, as I said, and by the way, if you go to tonight's piece on the Dialogue Ireland blog, you'll just put in the word Theo into our blog, and you'll find all the links to the talk that I'm giving, so I won't be bothering you with quotations from stuff. You can go read this up. So one of the